Hello students, welcome to class 6 Science, chapter 14, Water. Suppose for some reason your family gets only one bucket of water every day for a week. Imagine what would happen. Would you be able to cook, clean utensils, wash clothes or bathe? What are the other activities you would not be able to do? What would happen if we do not have easy access to water for a long time? How much water do we use? We use water for different purposes throughout the day. Now, list out the categories of using water in your house. Now you have an idea of the purposes the water is used. Now you know how the water is used. Using this information, calculate the amount of water needed by your family in a year. Now divide this amount by the number of members of your family. This will give you an idea of the total amount of water needed by one member of your family in a year. Find the number of people that live in your village or town. Now use the same information and divide the water consumption. You may now get an idea of the amount of water needed by your village or town in an year. Where do we get water from? Where do we get the water that we use? We draw water from a river, spring, pond, well and an hand pump. Some others may say we get water from taps. Have you ever wondered where water in the tap comes from? Water that we get from taps is also drawn from a lake or a river or a well. It is then supplied through a network of pipes. Each of us may be getting water into our homes in different ways, but finally all of us get water from the same sources such as ponds, lakes, rivers and wells. Do you know that about 2/3 of the earth is covered with water? Most of the water is in oceans and seas. The water in the oceans and sea has many salts dissolved in it. The water is called saline. So, it is not fit for drinking and other domestic, agricultural and industrial needs. Now we know that the water is salty and cannot be used, and this is where the water cycle comes in. Water cycle. Disappearing trick of water. How many times have you noticed that water spilled on the floor dries up after some time? The water seems to disappear. Similarly, water disappears from wet clothes as they dry up. Water from wet roads, rooftops and a few other places also disappear after the rain. Where does this water go? This process is called evaporation. In this, the sun's heat falls on the water. Due to the heat, the water turns into vapor and evaporates and goes up. The water that is evaporated becomes clouds. Later, it becomes rain and comes back on the surface of the earth. This is known as the water cycle. Loss of water by plants. We have learned that plants need water to grow. Plants use a part of this water to prepare their food and retain some of it in their different parts. Remaining part of this water is released by the plants into the air as water vapor through a process of transpiration. Our clouds form. As we go higher from the surface of the earth, it gets cooler. When the air moves up, it gets cooler and cooler. At sufficient heights, the air becomes so cool that the water vapor present in it condenses to form tiny drops of water called droplets. It is their tiny droplets that remain floating in air that appear to us as clouds. Some drops of water become so heavy that they begin to fall. These falling water droplets are called rain. Back to the oceans. What happens to the water that rain and snow bring to different regions of earth? Almost all land surfaces are above the level of oceans. Most of the water that falls on the land as rain and snow sooner or later goes back to the oceans. Snow in the mountains melt into water. This water flows down the mountain to form streams and rivers. Some of the water that falls on land as rain also flows in the form of rivers and streams. The rainwater also fills up the lakes and ponds. A part of the rainwater gets absorbed by the ground and seems to disappear in the soil. Some of this water is brought back by the air by the process of evaporation or transpiration. Most of the water available to us as groundwater. Open wells are fed by groundwater. Groundwater is the source of many lakes as well. It is also this groundwater which is drawn by an hand pump or a tube well. The circulation of water in this manner is known as the water cycle. What if it rains heavily? The time, duration and the amount of rainfall varies from place to place. In some parts of the world, it rains throughout the year, while there are places where it rains only for a few days. In our country, most of the rainfall occurs during the monsoon season. Rains bring relief, especially after hot summer days. The sowing of many crops depend on the arrival of monsoon. However, excess of rainfall may lead to many problems. Heavy rains may lead to rise in the level of waters in lakes, ponds and rivers. The water may then spread over a large area, causing floods. The crop fields, forests, villages and cities may get submerged by water. In our country, floods cause extensive damage to crops, domestic animals, property and human life. During floods, the animals living in the water also gets carried away with the water. They often get trapped on land areas and die when flood water recedes. Rains also affect the animals living in the soil. What happens if it does not rain for a long period? Can you imagine what would happen if it does not rain in a region for a year or more? The soil continues to lose water by evaporation and transpiration. The level of water in the ponds and wells of the region goes down and some of them may even dry up. The groundwater may also become scarce. This may lead to drought. In drought conditions, it is difficult to get food and fodder. How can we conserve water? Only a small fraction of the water available on the earth is fit for the use of plants, animals and humans. Most of the water is in the oceans and it cannot be used directly. The demand of water is increasing day by day. The number of people using water is increasing with rising populations. In many countries, long queues for collection of water are a common sight. Also, more and more water is being used for producing food and by the industries. These factors are leading to the shortage of water in many parts of the world. Hence, it is very important that water is used carefully. We should take care not to waste water. Rainwater harvesting. One way of increasing the availability of water is to collect rainwater and store it for later use. Collecting rainwater in this way is called rainwater harvesting. The basic idea behind rainwater harvesting is catch water where it falls. What happens to the rainwater that falls on the rooftops of buildings? It can be stored and later be used for daily purposes. Here, there are two techniques of rainwater harvesting. One, rooftop rainwater harvesting, in which the water that falls on the rooftops can be stored in bigger tanks and use it later. Two, another option is to allow water to go into the ground directly from the roadside drains that collect rainwater.